Every guy needs to hear that. I don't know if you know this, but America has the highest rate of fatherlessness
Yes, I know
than any other country in the world.
The man-demic that you claim, or use that term, is really tied, and it really is fatherlessness.
No matter what you've faced in your life, no matter what you've gone through, the regrets you may have for missed opportunities, those don't disqualify you. Rather, they uniquely qualify you. They uniquely qualify you because you can impart wisdom. You can impart lessons learned. You can speak into the lives of those following behind. We need you. The world needs you to step up and have vision again. Use your imagination. What can my life look like? Welcome to Next Third, Best Third.
Hey again, welcome back to Next Third, Best Third. I'm David Fenwick. I'm the founder and the host, and we're so excited to have you here. I'm with Tyson Morlet, my friend. Tyson and I have done an episode previously on communication, but today what we're going to be talking about is we're really going to be, in this day and age, is going to be examining what it really means to be a man. And that the reality is we need good men, but we need to define that. And so as you're going in and looking at your life and trying to live with intentionality, I think it's beneficial for us as men to take a step back and really grab hold of our identity. And our identity is not as a salesperson or a doctor or a lawyer, but our identity as a man. And what does that mean, especially navigating this crazy world that we find ourselves in? So Tyson, so glad to have you here.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about a term. We're going to talk about a topic, but you have a term that you dropped on me, and it's man-demic.
We're in a man-demic right now.
Okay, let's just jump in. What are you talking
about? It's at least
about?
national.
Okay.
Yeah, as a young pastor, I'm not anymore, and that's probably for a different podcast.
Yeah.
But as a young pastor, my job with my wife was to oversee the creative team. And the creative team, you've got your artists, you've got your artisans, you've got your video people, tech people, the full gamut, most of them single. And watching them navigate what it is to be a single in this time in the church was really interesting. And over again, what I found is these guys were stuck in a perpetual adolescence, unable to go to the next level of manhood. No map for them either. And even some dangers along the way that they're trying to avoid, pitfalls they're trying to avoid. And the women are ready for these men to step up, but there's no men. So they have to deal with picking through these adolescents, hoping that they'll grow up in the process of courtship and marriage and whatever. And so what would often happen is I would just see these young ladies become less young and still without a partner.
I'm sure they were disenchanted. They were like wondering what's going on here,
Yeah, a lot of them were, because they have their own self-doubts and their own things that they're worried about. They're like, what's wrong with me was a common theme. And I'd listen to my wife counsel these ladies with tears, just what's wrong? Why can't I find anybody? Why didn't this last? Why didn't this stick? Why is he this way? Why is he not this way? And it's a perpetual problem that I think, we've been trying to figure out for a long time. But we're really kind of in the midst of it in a big way right now.
Yeah. We've talked a lot on previous episodes and with Next Third, Best Third about this idea of masculine that I grew up with in my generation for sure. And it was this isolated, this John Wayne, this
Marlboro man.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Marlboro man. And it's this person who rides in and rides out, solves a few problems. The women are swooning and then they're gone. There's no family. There's no real connection. And, I find that for me, I grew up and as a teenager in the 70s and everything, so we went through all the hippie stuff and, all of a sudden for the first time you're seeing long-haired guys and guys wearing, all the flamboyant clothes. And,
right.
So everything was kind of swirling around about what a man was. But I still, have had to navigate that myself, trying to figure out who am I as a man, right?
Yeah.
A man is more than sexual conquest. But that was a big part of my young age, was this whole thing of saying, well, that's what a real man is. A man has notches in his belt as sexual conquest,
Yeah.
and then you get married and you start having kids, and it's like going, okay, now I've got to be this dad, as a man there, So let's just talk a little bit more about that as far as your perspective.
Yeah, well, I grew up in the church. My parents are the sex, drug, rock and roll lifestyle till I was about 7, 8 years old. Then, they were, living in track home. Pastor lived down the street, came by, to, build this church, and they did the thing and became baptized. And now we're in this, Baptist church, and I'm drug along. And so for a church kid, the options for you, as far as, well, I have a lot of thoughts about this, but I think one thing that we're reacting to is purity culture, which maybe is something you didn't have to go through, which may be better. But man, we just had to white knuckle abstain from any sexual contact from anyone, and that's how we retained being holy and righteous and pure. And so, man, I think that we all in the 7th grade, I remember dial-up internet, AOL. I remember seeing my first pornographic image at 8, and so. But I'm living in this purity culture where we're not allowed to talk about it. We're not allowed to. Sexuality is taboo. It's sinful. It's wrong. And I think we corrected ourselves in that. We learned how to self-soothe through being the generation of pornography.
Yeah.
And I think that what we're seeing, kids my age, 7th grade, the internet was, I was doing the dial-up thing where you had to wait to see the boobs, And I think that, man, I found that to be an escape right away. And I think that now a 13-year-old boy, a 8-year-old boy can have a harem of women bigger than any king or anybody before them has ever experienced at the click of their finger,
right,
within seconds.
Right.
And then we're wondering, where are all the men? Well, the men are doped up out of their minds.
Right.
And I think purity culture for me as a young church kid, I don't say Christian because I wasn't even following Jesus at all, but as a young church kid dragged to church, hiding this secret addiction in the back closet, not able to talk to anybody about it because of how it was viewed, finding this as self-soothing, now trying to grow up. I mean, that sex drive is so important actually for humanity. It's so important for guys especially because it's supposed to thrust us out of the house into employment, into becoming some kind of stable person, which I think is what a man is a stable person. And we'll talk, right, hopefully be able to define that a little bit more. But they're supposed to find some kind of stability that they can offer then a woman and start having kids.
Right.
And this is how the human race is perpetuated forever, and it's how it will continue to perpetuate, hopefully. And it's what the ancient document prescribes as the way to build community, is through this thing, the nuclear family. But man, that man is missing today in so many, as the women are looking around. I mean, and I told you anecdotally, I know woman after woman who has found a different way to build a family because a man is not present.
It's interesting because in the social political world, there's this blame, let's say, on feminism. There's this blame on women in Hollywood and different people demasculating men. But really what I'm hearing is that may be a byproduct. That's certainly not the cause. The cause is something much deeper. And I think you're tapping into something right there.
Yeah, I think we're doped out of our minds.
Yeah.
I think we deserve, as this half of the species, or less than half, we deserve to be looked at critically in this season.
Yeah.
And what a man does when they're looked at critically is they self-assess, like we've been talking about. They course correct, and they become a better version of themselves.
Right.
And that's why me getting married at 26 with a hidden pornography addiction, it comes out early on in my marriage. And my wife, because I'm perfectly designed for her and she's perfectly designed for me, was hurt by one of her caretakers who was a porn addict. So she was not going to have that,
Right.
And that became explosive and combustible.
Right.
And that forced me to deal with it.
One of the things with Next Third, Best Third, we talk about fighting areas of decay, and it's cognitive, it's physical, It's emotional, relational, and then what I call spiritual. And spiritual isn't about your relationship with God. It's these things that you bring into the marriage, right?
Right.
It's regret, it's abuse, it's disappointment, disillusionment, shame, all these kind of things. And what I've found, and I've talked and shared and ministered to so many men, that's all I do. And I find so many guys who they don't want to deal with those things, right? They're physically not in the shape they should be. They're not taking care of themselves. Emotionally, they're just checked out, And so you end up seeing these guys who are isolated, especially as the guy gets older. What ends up happening is his sphere of influence shrinks. So you haven't experienced this yet, but
I've definitely experienced it.
So right, and so you get this shrinking sphere of influence. Sometimes it's because you're not building anymore. You're at the end of your career,
Yeah.
and so you're not networking as much. Sometimes it's that your friends were the dads of your kids' friends in sports and things like that. Well, then they move out of the house, and now you don't have those relationships. Right. And you find yourself isolated, and I'm telling you, an isolated man is a bad thing.
It's a bad thing.
It's a really bad thing. And that's what porn does too, is it isolates you.
Yeah, even this thing, sex is designed, by design, it's to be experienced with at least two people. I think we can make that argument all day long.
Right.
That's by design. It's to procreate, to make babies.
That's right.
That's what it's for. And of course, there's other benefits. But when you take it out of that,
right,
and it's no longer me and her, it's now me and me. Of course, you're just isolated. You're relearning how to isolate.
Right. Right.
And I think it's exactly what you're talking about. I think a man, the first thing a man is a son.
Yeah.
First, a son. And I remember opportunities where my dad could have helped me shepherd the changing hormones in my life, and he didn't.
Right.
And he closed the door and tried to let me figure it out on my own.
Yeah.
And that's how I learned how to isolate and hide and pretend and keep it in the back door. And now I'm understanding that I am first a son.
Yeah.
And as a father, my son is first a son. He is mine to shepherd and to help and to walk alongside of. And so for me and him, as he's developing, his sex life is not something he has to figure out on his own.
That's good.
It's something I get to walk alongside him.
See, you have such a high value for communication. That's one of the things I love about you is your commitment and your high value for communication. And, I never had any communication with my dad at all about anything of real value. He was just a busy man, right? That's just World War II vet, he's just working. That's how he showed you he loved you. He was working real hard. And like you, I had to figure it out on my own. And I didn't develop the skills I'm a good communicator today, but I wasn't a great communicator with my own son.
Right.
And so that value of communication, saying I'm not going to let my son navigate probably the most important thing that he has to navigate.
Yeah.
His masculinity and his sexuality.
When I did go first, and I did learn a little bit about it, I may not be some guru, but man, there's something I can offer.
That's right. That's right.
And
you were his age before.
I was his age before. And so he's 5 right now. Obviously, we're not going to be having the sex talk while he's 5. Not trying to jack him up.
No.
But we go to a coffee shop every Saturday. We get up before all the women. I got 2 girls and a wife. We get up before they do. We head to the coffee shop, and we're not having the conversation, but I am building a pattern of communication so that when he needs the conversation,
that's right,
it's something we're already intentionally doing and have been doing.
More than laying the groundwork, you're actually erecting the safe space.
That's an interesting word to use considering the topic.
Yeah.
But yes, I want to create that space so that when he needs it, it doesn't feel like I'm forcing something that doesn't already exist.
Right. That it's not awkward and weird.
He's got this safe place to have these weird conversations, and he wants to talk about all kinds of weird stuff all the time. So, so we're first a son. And I think, again, going back to the ancient document, I always want to go back to the ancient document. It stood the test of time. Whether it's historical narrative, whether it's allegory, whether Jesus came in bodily form or it's a beautiful story, I really don't care, to be honest. What I care about is when Jesus was stepping out onto his own to fulfill his life's purpose, God came down and said some very important things to him that every son needs to hear.
Come on.
He said, "This is my son." He claimed him.
That's right.
He said, "Not only are you mine, but there's a lineage that goes back. There's a dynasty that you're stepping into. You are my son. No matter how alone you feel, no matter how isolated you feel, you are mine, and I am there with you." He established that right away. Not only that, but he said it in front of a bunch of people.
Right.
So if there was any doubt,
That's right.
this son has been claimed.
And
I tell my son every day, "You are my son."
You're establishing identity, right?
Right.
But more than identity, you're establishing security, and you're establishing
That's right.
significance.
That's good. Yeah.
You know, the search for significance is at the core of every person, right? To
Yeah.
be seen, heard, and valued,
Yeah.
you know? And then on top of it, he said, "This is my son." And then he said, "In whom I'm well
Right.
pleased."
In whom
right?
I'm well pleased. And this is before Jesus had done anything.
He hadn't done anything.
You know,
to
all he
speak
did
of.
was argue with a few religious leaders and talk back to his mom a little bit. And he was already like, "I am well pleased with you."
That's right.
Not because of what you've done, not because of what you've brought to the table, but because of who you intrinsically are as my son.
That's right.
And every guy needs to hear that.
Every man needs to hear
And
that.
the sad reality is, man, I don't know if you know this, but America has the highest rate of fatherlessness
Yes, I know that.
than any other country in the world.
The man-demic that you claim is, or use that term, is really tied, and it really is fatherlessness.
Right, which is why I want to start, the starting place I think is so important is sonship.
Right.
You know, and then we'll get to the dopamine porn generation that we find ourselves in. I just wanted to bring a few stats here, man.
Yeah.
In the world, USA is top. World fatherlessness is 7%. China, 3%. India, 4%. USA, this stat is recent, 24% have no father. 24% of sons are raised by a woman. And we're wondering why there's no good men. Right. This is crazy to me. In the 60s, in America, it was 4%.
Yeah.
Something has happened between 1960 and 2024, where we find ourselves now, to where now the fatherlessness has skyrocketed to 24%. And the results of this, I mean, we're getting data now. Data's in real time here. From fatherless homes, 90% of the homeless and runaway come from fatherless homes. 63% of teen suicide, fatherless homes. 85% of behavioral disorders that have been reported and documented come from fatherless homes. 70% of teenage pregnancies, fatherless homes. Fatherless kids are 20 times more likely to be incarcerated. Just sit on that for a second. Because when you incarcerate a son, what you do is cut off that dynasty. Right? You cut off what that family line could have been. Well, 20% are more likely to be incarcerated. 11% are more likely to exhibit violent behavior, as documented. This is a problem.
This is an epidemic.
It's a man-demic.
It's a man-demic, yeah.
And it needs to be dealt with. It needs to be talked about. It needs to be screamed from the rooftops. To those who are affected by this, 24%, like what I would like to say to you is, you need to hear, "This is my son in whom I'm well pleased." And there is a voice that has been crying from the wilderness, claiming you from the beginning. And I would say, stop and listen and hear his voice. You're like, "No, my dad's gone. I haven't seen him since I was XYZ, whatever." I'm talking about there's something outside of you that is calling to you and claiming you. And it's time to hear that voice.
Absolutely.
If you don't have an earthly father to hear, you got to find a heavenly one.
You know, it brings up a couple things to me. It doesn't matter what age you are, right? You need to hear that.
Yep.
Part of our vision is to get men to take honest assessment, you know, and
I love that.
And to be real.
Need help for that.
I knew something happened to me as a 12-year-old boy, and when I went through my grief counseling, and everything started to come out, and I realized that at age 12 I was sexually abused by a priest.
I'm sorry.
Multiple times. Happened. The lie that was attached, because so many times when you go through trauma, there's a lie attached. The lie that was attached was that I wasn't worth protecting, and that definitely carried over for years and years and years. Decades into my life affected how I responded to things, how I acted, all sorts of things. And I was a good guy. Everyone liked me. I was a good guy on the outside. I was great. But there was this inner turmoil. So even at this point in my life, I've finally come to the place where I'm accepting the reality that I am a son.
Yeah.
And he's pleased with me.
Yeah.
And so performance has stopped, right? And I'm investing in other men because I want to speak into other men's lives.
Yeah.
And call out the gold in them and declare over them,
right.
Hey, your father might not have said this, but let me say this to you, if nothing else.
Ooh, I love that.
And one of the other things that I want you to maybe you can speak to is not just fatherlessness where they're not in the home, but the absentee father who's in the home.
This is actually a big part of what we do with What Into War. And again, I have to go back to the ancient document. I'm sorry.
No,
if anybody's sick of hearing about it.
No.
When this is such an interesting, it has so much to do with what we're talking about. But when we grow up in the West, we think of the book of Genesis as this historical narrative. It definitely is not. There's definitely symbols, and there's metaphors, and there's allegory, and how we sort through all that, I think scholars will be trying to figure out forever. But I do know this: when God joined the first human, or the archetypal human, the first archetype, the first prototype, when he joined him, Adam, to Eve, and they came together, God blessed the marriage with a mission. And that mission was to go into all the earth and bring it into submission, to categorize, organize it, make it the most efficient that it could possibly be. And somewhere along the way, we started to think of this mission as Adam's alone. It was Adam's job to go into the marketplace, go into the workplace, yield the fruit out of it, while it was the woman's job to stay at home and care for kids. And so what we see now is the woman is trying to fight that, and now they want into the marketplace, and they want to be making money, and they don't want to be relying on the security of man. And I salute that, actually. I applaud that.
Because that's kind of redeeming the original mandate.
If you move forward in the story and they blow it and they're separated from God, a natural consequence of this is something scholars call the curse. I think of it even better as a generational curse. And it was, woman, you focus on the baby, in much pain and you will bring forth children. And man, you go to work, in much pain you will bring forth fruit from the land. And so if we live into that patriarchal idea, then what we're actually doing is we're reaffirming the curse, the generational curse of Genesis 3. And we're not supposed to, it's the curse for a reason.
Right.
And so one of the things that I figured out, and this was as a pastor, I'm working at the church, I'm working at a very big church. I'm dumping 55, 60 hours, sometimes 70 hours a week into building this little kingdom, down the street. And I missed my second-born's babyhood. Like, I wasn't there. I was checked out. My marriage was a hot mess because I had no time or no emotional energy for it. And I just woke up one day and realized, oh my gosh, I've lost the last 3 years because I'm building and I'm doing God's work. And God just touched my heart and he said, no, your job is here with this family.
That's right.
And I quit.
Yeah.
I just up and quit. I'm not recommending that,
Well, not every, yeah.
I up and quit, man. And we had no backup plan. My wife worked for the church too. We were looking at each other like, this is not it. And we left. And man, everything has been so much better then, because I now realized that what I was doing was reaffirming the curse. I was reaffirming the way things aren't supposed to be. And in the beginning, it was always the job of the man and woman together to go into the earth, cultivate it, bring the chaos into order, breathe life into it, and build ultimately cities.
And I would say this also. It was also the man and woman's duty and responsibility to parent, to raise family.
Oh, yeah.
And that is a big missing piece here. We need good men, we need real men, but we need men who will partner and invest in family, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, because that's our first priority.
Right.
I mean, more than us changing the world, right? More than us bringing transformation to society, more than us building this tremendous company and all these kind of things, our first and foremost is to our wife and our kids.
Yeah. And the regret of the best of men, they're on their deathbed. They're not saying, man, I wish I would have invested more money in my company. Man, I wish I would have spent more time at the office.
Yeah.
The regret of the best of us is, I wish I would have been there for my kids. I wish I would have been there with my wife.
I've been blessed to be at deathbeds of many people. And I can concur that that is exactly the regret.
Let's learn.
Yeah.
Let's course correct now.
That's right.
And I think we see the fruit of the curse. We feel it in our own families. The generational curse is still on. My dad, he went to work. He wasn't around.
Right.
I never got to hear, you are my son and in you I am well pleased, because he was busy turning a wrench trying to make ends meet for my family. I was raised by a woman.
Yeah.
And then I got married and I thought I just went from one mom to the next mom, and I've had to relearn all that.
That didn't go well.
No, I mean, it didn't go well for Adam and Eve either. I mean,
Right.
Eve has her son, Cain, and she says, finally, with the help of the Lord, I found a man.
Yeah.
Where's Adam? He's like, I'm a man. I've been here. I actually had something to do with this, son. And he's off working, man. He's off toiling the ground. He's not even present. And then what happens? She pushes Cain, because she's parenting him alone from the best we can tell. She pushes Cain into hopefully crushing the head of the enemy, which was promised in the curse, not realizing that was a future promise about somebody else. She pushes Cain so much that he crushes the head of his brother. Wrong head. And it just doesn't, no. We are designed to parent together.
Right.
My terrain is the heart of my children and the heart of my spouse.
Yeah.
And man, how backwards we have everything. I don't even know how we started talking about this. You asked a question.
Yeah, that's okay.
And we got
this conversation, right? This topic can go so many different ways, right? It can go so many different ways. We started talking about that.
Oh, fatherlessness, because we're stuck at work.
Yeah.
Our mind is on our
Absentee
money.
fathers.
Our money is on our
Absentee
mind.
fathers,
Yeah.
That was it.
Yep. And we never learned how to, I mean, one of the best things you can do, I mean, some of you guys don't have dads. You found yourself in this new marriage. You've got these kids. One of the best things you can do is be present.
Yeah.
Be present from the hours of 5 to 8, 5 to 9, whatever your situation is, man. Put work down. I know trust me. Like, I want to work. Right now, I want to work. At night, I want to work. I'm obsessed about work. I think I have my own company now. I dream about it. I dream about being in the black and profit margins. This is us. This is how we're designed to be. But man, we can take that same intention and we can actually turn it towards our kids and get even more fruit than we ever dreamed.
So many men that I reach out to and we minister to here through Next Third, Best Third is guys who are, 50s, 60s, and 70s. And, they might have regrets that they were an absentee father, right? I run across a lot of guys and we talk about this and they feel, man, I blew it with my kids. And first off, it's never too late to go back and redeem.
Yes.
It's never too late. But the other thing I challenge them with is to say, okay, from your pain and your brokenness, right? You're now uniquely qualified. And what you can do is you can invest in some other young men. They might not be your son.
I love that.
Right?
Yeah, I love that.
And that's a way to redeem even your own life, your own failings. Is saying, I'm going to invest in you.
Right.
You're 24 years younger than me, right?
Right.
I'll invest in you, and I'll speak into your life, and I'll challenge you, and I'll encourage you, and I'll be raw and real with you on my failures, so that then you can grab my failures and say, man, what can I learn from this?
Right. Right.
But that takes a man to be a real man, a good man, because you have to be transparent and vulnerable.
Yeah.
You have to be honest and say, hey, I've blown it.
Yeah.
But I don't want to blow it anymore.
Right. And I think it takes wisdom to, like, when God looks down at Jesus, who hasn't accomplished his earthly ministry at all yet.
Yeah.
And he says, this is my son in whom I'm well pleased. You need to find something to be pleased about with people.
Right.
And that takes wisdom, man. I want to meet somebody, and even if they're a scoundrel, they're a scoundrel because they haven't heard who they are.
That's right.
And if you can remind them of who they are, man, that is step one for a lot of people on a lifelong journey of healing and wholeness.
You know, and it doesn't, like at your age, 41, there could be a guy who's 41 and you could be fathering him.
Oh yeah.
Right. It's not an age thing.
Right.
You know,
I mean, hopefully Dad, you're okay with me sharing this, but my dad never heard that from his dad. And so sometimes he needs to hear it from me.
That's right. He
which
needs
is
to hear
crazy.
it from some man.
Yeah. There are times where I got to be like, Dad, man, you are the son of a divine mind.
Right.
And he's gifted you with loyalty and strength. And I'm reminding him of the good that had been placed in him.
Yeah.
And we all need to hear it.
We really need to become a tribe of men, right? Who are encouraging each other all the time. One of the phrases I've heard, and I like it, is to call out the gold in somebody. You know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Call out the gold.
I love that.
You know, you meet somebody, and like say he could be a scoundrel. He could you might be really working your brain trying to figure out something, right? But call out the gold in somebody, and you see them come alive.
They may have never heard it before.
That's right. I was at a restaurant with my daughter one time, and my kids are always like, "Oh, Dad, don't do it," you know, because I talk to everybody, you know. And there was this young man there, and his name was Dante, right? And so, anyways, we were about to leave. I'd paid my check, and I saw him sitting, and he was sitting in a booth arranging the salt and pepper and sugars, you know, getting it all.
Yeah.
And I looked over, and my daughter says, "Are you going to do so?" You know, and I'm like, "Yeah, I'm going over there."
She could sense
she could
it.
tell it because they're used to me doing this. But anyways, I went up to him, and I just said, "Dante," I said, "Have you ever heard of Dante's fire?" Right? And I said, "Inside of you is a fire." And I said, God placed that inside of you, and he's proud of you, and he's looking forward to what you're going to do in your life. And I said, I just started speaking into his life. And this young man was just crying, and he got up and he hugged me. And you could tell, just hearing that from a father, hearing that from a man, he needed to hear that.
We all do.
You know,
it's by design.
Now, that was a random guy, but how much more having intentional relationships, right, that you can have with people that, you know, in your workplace, in your church, and, you know, your kids' friends, you know, and for a man, for a father to speak positive and to call out the gold in somebody is so powerful.
Yeah, essential.
Yeah.
And you just don't know who desperately has been begging to hear it.
Yeah.
Begging, praying in desperation, and you could be that voice.
I don't know, you can probably speak into this better than me, but I think that men turn to things like pornography. First off, it's easy, but the second thing is it medicates, right? And it's a place to hide, you know?
I think as a generation, we've been slowly conditioned to numb ourselves out in any way we possibly can.
Yeah.
And I think it is anti-human. I think it is the attempt to end humanity, is to get the men doped out of their mind. And I mean, literally, when you look at pornography, you literally are putting so much dopamine in your brain that your brain literally is caking over. It's called delta phos-B. It cakes over your pleasure centers with this muck. And what it's trying to do is it's trying to regulate the amount of dopamine. And so that's why you got to get deeper and darker and weirder, because your pleasure centers are literally being caked by this stuff.
Wow.
Like an old engine that hasn't been cleaned, you know, the oil hasn't been changed, it's getting caked over, and so you need something more to get that dopamine fix. You need something more, and before too long you can feel nothing. That's why erectile dysfunction is at an all-time high. We have 11-year-olds with erectile dysfunction now. This is becoming a norm.
Wow.
And we're wondering where the men are, wondering why women can't find a good man, wondering why we have things like OnlyFans now, where women have to appeal to the sexual side of their nature in order to get our attention. And that's the only way they can get our attention. And they get it for about 13 seconds until we're moving on. The average amount of per video that a man consumes is 13 seconds before they move on. And yet we're trying to be monogamous after that. It's not going to work. This is failed by design.
Right.
And if pornography is not your drug, man, alcohol is your drug. And if alcohol is not your drug, marijuana is your drug. Or you're going to something stronger. You're going to something deeper.
Yeah.
That's because we're doped out of our minds, so that we don't push ourselves to become the better version of ourselves, to become that stable force upon which a family can be built.
Yeah.
And it is anti-human.
And I think, too, what happens through talking with so many men is you get in this cycle that you know you're not doing what you're supposed to do, right? You know you're not stepping into your role. You know you're kind of isolating and hiding. And so that causes you to want to isolate and hide and medicate more, right?
Yeah.
It's this ongoing cycle.
Absolutely.
Because deep down you know it's wrong. Deep down you know that you're called for more, but you need someone to come alongside you.
Yeah, well, I think it's the ancient lie, in the ancient document. When the enemy approaches Eve, he says, I heard you can't eat any of these trees. And what is that lie?
Yeah.
The genesis of that lie is, did God give you what you need? That's it. And of course, he gave them every tree in the garden except for this
Except for one.
Right? But his lie is, you can't even eat anything. It's the same lie.
Right.
And so, man, when we look at addiction, which I think is so important, a father helps a son overcome addiction. That's what they should do, because addiction is a normal human experience. Mm-hmm. Coping and soothing are normal human experiences.
Right.
This is the analogy I love to use on this. I have an old truck, paid for, no debt. You know how it is. And I was trying to get this thing to pass inspection. Here in Texas, you got to get an inspection every single year. It's so annoying. Anyways, I cannot get this thing to pass inspection to save my life. I'm changing all these parts. I'm fixing check engine lights and trying to figure it out. And I can't figure it out. My dad's a mechanic. So I finally, I'm like, Dad, I can't get this thing to pass. What do I got to do? And he's like, you got to reset the computer. I'm like, how do I do that? He's like, you got to drive on the freeway 55 miles an hour. You got to stay 55, go 55. Okay. I get on the freeway. I drive for an hour. I'm going 65. I'm going 75. I'm just cruising. I'm like, all right, go back to the inspection place. Fail again. What the heck? I call my dad. What the heck? I did it. He's like, did you stay 55? And I said, well, no. I was like 65 for a while, 70 for a while, 55 for a while. He's like, no, you got to, even if people are annoyed, you got to stay 55. Let them go around you. Stay 55. And so, man, I set a timer. I hit 183, which is a toll road, no traffic. I did 55 for 15 full minutes, man. I took it in, passed, flying colors.
That's amazing.
That is life.
Right.
You got to find 55.
Yeah.
When it comes to alcohol, you got to find your 55. Because I think it's a blessing. I think throughout the ancient document, it's this symbol of prosperity and joy. Mm-hmm. So find your 55. Can it be something that overtakes you? Yes. Find 55. Sex. Find 55. For me, 55 has nothing to do with pornography. 55 is with my wife in the hidden place of our marriage. Whatever your substance is, you got to find 55. Watching shows and enveloping yourself in another great man's story. Find 55. It can't be all day, every day. It can't be, video games. You can't just be on Fortnite finding your purpose.
And it can't be going 100 miles an hour for 5 minutes or 3 seconds or 30 seconds. So.
And so find your 55, man. Find mastery over your soul sack, your flesh bag. Master this thing. It wants to cope. It wants to dope out. It wants to numb. It wants to not work. It wants to get fat and lazy. That's what it wants. And it's anti-human because you don't live as long, you don't live as healthy, and you don't live as whole. So find 55, figure out how to temper all those things, have mastery over them, look at the addictions that have plagued your family for generations and understand your weak spots and move forward. To me, that's what a man is.
That's so good.
And bring some others with you.
It's so good. I love that. And what I found is when I get victories, right? Whatever that little victory is, right? When I overcome something or I get a victory, it's something you build on. There's a term in the Bible, they talk about testimony, right? Yeah. There's power in testimony.
Oh, yeah.
Your own testimony saying, hey, I overcame this. Your testimony, I listened to you, and I can glean from that, right? You can glean from somebody else's testimony. That's why we need relationships. Right. That's why we need intentional relationships. And men do need men.
Yeah.
We do need men. I'm in a group of guys here in town. We call it Dragon Slayers. Danny Silk started this, if anyone knows Danny. But it's about gathering 12 guys and being real. just being real, just being there.
Yeah.
And we don't talk about our problems. Sometimes we do, but more.
Yeah, it's not like a boohoo group.
No,
Nobody
no,
wants
no.
that. I don't
Nobody
want
wants
that.
that.
Yeah.
But really what it is, it's guys who are looking at each other and encouraging, challenging each other to dream, think about
Right.
the what ifs,
Right.
actually calling each other a son,
Yeah.
a brother,
Need that.
a good dad, telling somebody, look them in the eye and saying, God's proud of you.
Yeah.
I don't feel it. Yeah, he is.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. And so we do need men, one another. We need good men, but I contend it's almost impossible to be a good man alone.
I don't know. We're not supposed to be.
Right.
Yeah. If that was it, then Adam would be alone.
That's right.
He said it's good. It's not good for man to be alone.
And that doesn't just mean being with a woman.
No.
It means having relationships with men who can call out the gold, who can encourage you, who can be there with you to reach a hand down. Like I always say, you don't get into the gutter with somebody. You reach a hand down and pull them out.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Yeah. I think anybody out there who's stuck, you're doped out, you're numbed out, you're finding yourself choosing that over getting right, getting healthy. I think one of the best things you can do, number one, is a dopamine fast. I really think that.
Okay. What's that look like?
For me, when I finally was like, I'm ready to kick porn, and that's a long story, but I'm actually coming up on 6 years sober. Next March will be 6 years, so I'm 5.5. And when I say sober, I mean no hardcore pornography. I still like see the occasional boobs on a movie or something and have to re-regulate.
Yeah, but it's you being intentional looking at it, searching it out.
100%.
You're not doing that. Okay.
100%. But I do view myself as an addict who is triggered like that.
Yeah.
So I understand that about myself now. And so I still haven't watched Game of Thrones. I hear it's amazing. I've heard all the spoilers. I'm like, no, but I just know for me, I'm not prescribing that for anyone else,
Right.
but for me, I understand my weak spots. That's not for me.
Right.
So anyways, a dopamine fast for me, what it looked like is I literally cut sugar. I cut anything fatty carbs, anything fried. I cut Netflix completely. I watched nothing. I turned all the video games off.
Yeah.
And I did this for 7 days. And it reset everything for me.
You got 55 in the highway.
I found 55. Yeah. All right.
You reset the computer.
I had to reset the computer. And I actually, I accidentally stumbled in. This is actually a thing that people are talking about now. But I stumbled in it because Penn and Teller, the magicians, the illusionists, Penn, I think he's the big one, or Teller.
No, Penn's the big one.
Penn's the big one. He was getting big and he wasn't happy about it and he was getting unhealthy. And so he decided to eat only potatoes for like 10 days or something, 2 weeks or something. And he ate only potatoes, that's it, boiled potatoes for 2 weeks or something. And he said the best food he's ever had was an apple that he broke that potato fast with.
Wow.
And that was so interesting to me. He talked about, he's so articulate and he's funny. And he talked about the explosion of flavors that he had never even known.
Come on.
And man, after that 7 days, everything was like, whoa. I've been missing out on so much because my pleasure centers were so caked in crap,
Right.
And I experienced a new version of life that really was beautiful in every way. And so, man, I encourage that as a step one. Step two is exactly what you're saying. You got to find brothers who can walk alongside you.
Yeah.
I have a best friend who will call me out on my crap, and he does it with love. And I know he's there, and he knows when I'm isolating, and he comes after me when I'm isolating. And
That's right.
I'm the same for him. And man, I could not have gotten through this without him. And it's annoying. My wife will even text him, come get your boy. He needs help,
Yeah.
And I'm like, gosh, dang it. I hate to admit that I need help, but dude, I need help.
Yeah.
And I want to normalize needing help.
But see, again, that goes back to definition of masculinity is you have to be vulnerable and you have to be transparent. A real man is willing to take the risks to be called out, to be embarrassed, to be, seen.
Well, yeah, I want to go back to this point that asking for help is not weakness. It's refusing to give up.
I love that.
It means that even if all of hell comes against me, I will gather the friends I can to withstand it.
That's right.
And I'll journey into the depth of this broken ass heart to try and figure it out because I refuse to give up.
That's so good.
And thirdly, I want to normalize, get help. Get therapy. Get a paid professional. You guys are willing, you get fat and then you hire a personal trainer. This is no different. Right. You're all doped and numbed out from all of your bad habits. It's not a bad thing to ask for help from a professional who understands the mind and understands the heart. And I just want to normalize therapy. Now, I want to talk about this real quickly if we have time. But for me, I ended up in therapy because of panic attacks, because I was working at a very stressful job, trying to dance for, the powers that be, trying to make everybody happy. And I just could not keep up. And so I ended up having these panic attacks. And I was like, what is happening to me? I'm usually this very strong person. I don't need any help, but I'm getting these panic attacks. So I agree. Okay, I'm going to go see a therapist. And what this therapist did for me, again, it's not weakness. She slowly unlocked the places in my brain that I had built walls to survive since I was a child.
Come on.
She unlocked memories that I had suppressed.
Yeah.
I mean, unlocking a suppressed memory is one of the wildest experiences I've ever had in my life. Mm-hmm. It's like you don't know it. In 1 second, it's there and you remember it and you realize how it's informed every decision you've made after. And it's like unlocking that suppressed memory actually explains who you are to yourself.
Well, I had mentioned when I went and discovered that I was sexually abused, right?
Right.
That was unlocking a memory. And when that memory was unlocked, it's exactly what you said. I now could picture and see exactly when it happened.
Yep.
The times it
you
happened.
Can,
it was
smell
a couple
the
times.
Room. Yeah.
I could experience it. As painful as it was, it did. It started to make sense of my craziness.
Yeah.
My insanity wasn't insanity
Well, it's beautiful.
anymore.
Yeah, you realize that it was reasonable to end up where you ended up.
Absolutely.
But if you had known why you ended up that way, you would have fixed it by now.
Right.
And this is just how the brain works. It's trying to get us alive. I mean, at a very fundamental level, the brain is trying to keep us alive until we can procreate, so we continue the human race.
Right.
But man, after you procreate and you're not procreating anymore, then it's time to freaking dig in and figure out, okay, what are all these lies that I told myself to construct this false narrative?
That's right.
And I want to know what happened so that I can course correct and fix and heal.
See, this is so good, and I hope everyone's really gathering this, is if we're going to make our next third our best third, this is an opportunity, right? You're just laying out an opportunity saying, hey, we can get better.
Yeah.
Whatever it takes, if it obviously getting together with guys, if you go to some therapy, but let's just get better.
Yeah. You don't have to live in the past, but be informed.
Let's be free.
Yeah.
And better.
Yeah.
So,
and I mean, it starts with us, man. I can't point fingers at a man-demic saying where are all the guys at if I myself am not ready and willing to work.
That's right.
And if I myself am not ready to be that father, like guys out there with kids, normalize hanging out with your kids now, one-on-one. I take my daughters on dates so they know what a date looks like for when some jabroni's trying to take them on one. I take my son on an intentional hang. He gets a hot cocoa. I get a quad Americano. And I just talk about, we have a little kid's Bible we're going through. And he wants to talk about that for about 25 seconds. And then we talk about whatever he wants to talk about because I'm normalizing. Listen, when you need me, this pattern is already here.
Right.
And I refuse to let this next generation be another doped out generation.
That's right.
And if it's just me and my kid trying to figure it out, that's what I'll do. But if it's you guys who want to listen in and try and figure it out and join with me, I mean, this is how heaven comes to earth.
That's right. That's so good. We talked about before legacy. Legacy is who you leave behind, not what you leave behind.
Love it.
And so what you're doing is you're talking about legacy. Who are we leaving behind and how healthy are they?
Right.
And how much further are they going to go?
Yeah. And my grandkids might not remember my name. My great-grandkids probably won't.
But that legacy can be passed down.
But they're going to feel loved. They're going to feel accepted. They're going to hear, you are my son. You are my daughter in whom I'm well pleased. And they're going to hear that because I made a pattern of telling it to my kids.
So good.
And you know what? I can live with that.
So good. Well, this has been amazing.
Thanks for having me, man.
Oh, so good.
I learned a lot too.
Yeah. So thanks again. If you can do me a favor, click the like, the subscribe, comment. That all's helpful. Share this with some people. We want to make a difference, not just in your life and our lives, but in all the lives of men and women, but the men all across. Share this, and thanks. We'll see you next time.